I thought we were perfect. But the day she looked at me and smiled, I knew. That smile wasn't mine anymore. She didn't even try to hide it. Every moment, every laugh we shared now feels like a twisted lie. I wasn't her husband. I was just a placeholder. And the worst part? The day I found out, I wasn't even surprised. Because deep down, I always knew. I sat down in my recliner and looked at my phone. It was a bit after 9 p.m. and I was really tired. The twins had just gone to bed. I picked up the 6-year-olds from school at 4 p.m., which meant I had to leave work early. Once they were in the car, we went home. I rushed to make dinner, played with them for an hour, and then spent another hour trying to get them ready for bed. I was worn out. I got up and slowly made my way upstairs to the bedroom, leaving my clothes scattered on the floor as I headed for the bed. I lay down on top of the bedspread in my boxers and quickly fell asleep. When the alarm went off at 6 a.m., I groaned and rolled over. A few minutes later, I was in the bathroom, standing in a hot shower, trying to wake up. I shaved in the shower to save time, got out, and quickly got dressed for work. Next, I had to get the twins ready for school. They are both in first grade at the local elementary school. I gave them each a cherry Pop-Tart and a juice box for breakfast. I managed to make myself a cup of coffee with the Keurig machine, so I had a bit of caffeine in my system. Thankfully, our local school has a morning program for parents who need to be at work early. I dropped the twins off, and one of the aides waved as she took them into the school for a second breakfast before heading to their regular classroom. I didn't stick around, eager to get to my office to make up for the time I left early yesterday. I am a financial analyst, and I'm good at it. I make a good living and provide well for my family. I thought I had a strong marriage and a loving wife. But that changed 4 days ago when my loving wife sat down next to me. I was by the pool enjoying a beer. She took the seat closest to me, set down her glass of white wine, and started to talk. "Sweetie, we have such a great life and marriage. I love you so much. I don't want anything to come between us. I hope you feel the same way. I make my living by noticing small details and making decisions about deals involving a lot of money. I'm good at it. After 11 years with my wife, 7 of those as husband and wife, warning signs started flashing as I listened to her. You have a great job and career and make more money than we need to live a good life." I decided to say something. "Baby, you have a great job too. You may not make as much money as I do, but your job as a counselor at the women's shelter is more important than mine. You help more people than I ever will." She blushed at my praise. "Still, there's something missing for me, and I want to figure out why I feel this way." Uh-oh. Now the warning signs were like red flags in a strong wind. I looked at her face and saw an eager look. There was no guilt in her eyes. "So you want to get some counseling? That shouldn't be a problem." No, let me explain. You know Tom and Ruth?" I nodded. Tom and Ruth lived a few houses down from us. I didn't know them well. I knew that Tom was in real estate and Ruth owned a women's boutique. They didn't have any kids. Tom and Ruth have a sailboat in the Virgin Islands. From the pictures I've seen, it's really nice. They invited me to go down to the islands for a week to sail around the Caribbean. I've never done something like this, and I think it might help me figure out why I feel like I'm missing something in my life. I finished my beer and set the bottle down. When is this supposed to happen? We're leaving on Sunday and coming back the following Sunday night. I can't take a week off on such short notice. Plus, it will be almost impossible to find someone to take care of the twins for a week with only 2 days' notice. She shook her head and looked down, knowing what she was about to say wouldn't go over well. "The plans don't include you. You'll be here to take care of the kids." I was stunned. I looked at her like she had grown a third eye. "Let me get this straight. You plan to leave for a week on a sailboat in the Caribbean with 2 people we hardly know, leaving me here to take care of the kids and work, all without discussing it with me first?" "I'm talking to you now. 2 days before you leave. It sounds like you've already made up your mind without any discussion. That's a one-sided decision." I looked her in the face and tapped my finger on the table to emphasize my point. "No, you need to call Tom and Ruth and thank them for the invite, but tell them you can't go." She didn't flinch. Her eyes hardened, and she had a determined look on her face. "I'm sorry, but I need to do this for myself. I know it will be hard for you with the kids, but you're strong and adaptable. It's only a week. My anger was rising, and I was struggling to stay calm. With clenched teeth, I tried to respond without yelling. Then the doorbell rang. My wife jumped up and ran to answer the door. I heard voices, and a few seconds later, she came back with Tom and Ruth. I looked up at them in surprise. Ruth and Tom were both smiling, and my wife had a secretive look on her face. My mind was racing with thoughts. This felt like a setup. All the skills I use at work to handle tricky situations kicked in. Tom stopped, like he expected me to get up. I looked at him with a blank expression. I stayed quiet. I knew from experience that whoever starts talking first is often in a weaker position. My wife finally told everyone to sit down. Tom was on my left, Ruth on my right, and my wife sat across from me. I stayed silent. Tom broke the silence. "We're so happy that Shelley is coming with us to the Caribbean." I said nothing and looked at my wife. She looked down. Ruth spoke next. "She will have a great time. It's so relaxing on the boat. She'll come back like a new person." I glanced at my wife, but she was still staring at the table. "I don't want a new person. I like the one I have." That made all three of them look unsure. Tom stammered a bit before he spoke again. Shelley said you would be okay with her going on this trip." "Shelley was wrong. I'm completely against her going on a vacation to the Caribbean on such short notice with people we barely know, leaving her kids and husband alone." Tom looked nervously at Ruth. Ruth took over. "We're not strangers. Shelley and I have been having coffee together often." I looked at Shelley. She was still staring at the table. "I thought you worked at the shelter every day." Shelley spoke softly. "I cut back my hours a few weeks ago. I work in the afternoons now." More things started making sense in my mind. "Another decision you made without telling me. Is there anything else you want to share?" She shook her head. Ruth tried to lighten the mood. "Shelley and I have become close. We have a lot of the same interests. We're excited to do some sunbathing, swimming, and shopping on the islands." I looked at Tom. "And what will you be doing?" "Oh, the usual. Taking care of the boat, making sure we get from place to place, and joining in on the fun." I nodded. "Tom, what exactly do you do for work?" "I am an independent real estate developer." "Do you work for a company or a bank?" "No. I work on my own. I make deals between landowners, financiers, and construction companies. Then I help manage the properties after they're built." "Do you have an office?" "I work from home." I nodded. Things were adding up. "Let me summarize and you tell me if I've got it right." All three smiled brightly. "Shelley, you changed your work schedule to spend time with Ruth and Tom. Have you been at their house or ours?" The smiles faded quickly. I waited for Shelley to answer. "I didn't think you would mind. My income isn't very important. It's not about the money. It's about making big decisions without including me. Let me continue." I looked at all three of them and saw their worried faces. "Because of your new friendship with Tom and Ruth, they invited you to the Caribbean for a week and they're paying for it." "Oh, I have to pay my airfare." I let that go without comment. "And the three of you plan to have a vacation of swimming, sun, and shopping." All three of them looked shocked. Tom recovered first. "No, nothing like that. No one mentioned anything else." "Not specifically. But let me tell you what I think. Shelley changed her work schedule, maybe to spend time at your house. You work from home, so you're all together often. Over the last month, Shelley has changed her behavior. She dresses differently in the mornings. She's shown more interest in me, which I liked but now wonder about. On short notice, she tells me she's going away for a week with people I barely know. Can you see why I'm suspicious?" Their glances at each other told me a lot. Tom tried to save their plan. "Bill, you're wrong. There's nothing going on. Shelley told Ruth she was feeling empty, and we thought a trip might help her feel better." "Tom, excuse me, but this sounds like you're trying to help Shelley with her problems." I quickly changed my approach. "Shelley, I'll be clear. I am completely against you going on this trip with these people. Whether you go or not is your choice. But know that every decision has consequences, and you can't always predict what those will be. That's the risk you're taking." I pushed my chair back and stood up. "Since Shelley invited you here without asking me, I see no reason to stay any longer. She can have her friends over whenever she wants. I'm tired, and I'm going to bed." I left without saying goodbye. Upstairs, I changed clothes, turned out the lights, and got into bed. I lay on my side with my back to Shelley's side of the bed. I fell asleep easily. I don't know how long Tom and Ruth stayed talking with Shelley. I didn't wake up when she came to bed. I usually sleep in a little on Saturdays. When I got up, I put on work clothes and made coffee. I'm not big on breakfast, so I soon went outside to mow the lawn. Saturdays are my day to catch up on housework and then spend the afternoon in the pool with the twins if the weather is nice. I didn't see any reason to change that plan. Shelley didn't talk much to me that day. She seemed to be avoiding me. I saw her on the phone several times, watching me through the patio doors. I guessed she was talking to Ruth or Tom. I ignored it. Sunday morning was usually quiet. The kids were busy with videos. I like to spend quiet Sunday mornings on the pool deck with coffee and my tablet, catching up on the news. Shelley often joined me, but today she stayed upstairs. I didn't pay much attention, wanting to see how things would play out. Around 10 a.m., I went to the kitchen for more coffee and saw Shelley putting a backpack near the front door, next to another bag. I finished making my coffee and walked over to look at the bags. Shelley came down, dressed in capri pants and a sleeveless shirt. I sipped my coffee. "So, you're really going on this trip?" "Yes, it's only a week. It'll be good for both of us." "Shelley, it's only going to cause more problems than you think." She looked at me, confused. "What do you mean? How could it cause problems?" "I'm not going to explain it. If you want to ignore what you're doing and its consequences, then you don't really care." "That's not true. I'm doing this for us." I shook my head and went back to the pool deck. Soon I heard the kids crying inside. I went in to find the twins clinging to their mother's legs, crying hard. "Don't go, Mommy. We don't want you to leave. Who will take us to school and make dinner?" Shelley looked at me, hoping I'd help. I sipped my coffee and let her handle it. She knelt down to talk to them. "It's okay, babies. Mommy just needs a little time. Daddy will take care of you. I'll be back in a few days and bring you surprises." She stood up, grabbed her bags, and managed to get the twins to let go. I saw Tom and Ruth in their BMW waiting. Tom had the hatchback open, and Ruth was smiling and waving. The twins were still crying as the BMW drove away. I gathered the kids and promised them breakfast. I didn't plan to cook, but they loved the chocolate pancakes at IHOP. After breakfast, we spent the morning at the park. I met some other moms there, and we chatted while the kids played. They were friendly, and soon I was part of the conversation. One of the women asked if I was a single dad, and I joked that I was for the week. This led to many questions, but I deflected them, saying my wife was on a family trip. Lunch was at McDonald's, which had a play area. It wasn't the healthiest meal, but it kept us out of the house, and I had some adult company. I even met 3 other dads there with their kids for court-appointed visits. I didn't ask too many questions out of respect. After lunch, the kids and I negotiated a trip to the mall and the toy store. We left without buying anything and got home in time for dinner. I managed some quiet time before getting the twins to bed just after 9. Monday almost went wrong. I overslept, making the rush to get the twins to school hectic. The teacher met me at the door, asking if there was a problem. I explained that their mom was away and I was handling everything. She told me about the school's breakfast program, but I didn't have time to sign up then, as I was already late for work. I talked to my boss, explained the situation, and he was annoyed but allowed me to adjust my schedule for the week to take care of the twins. I agreed to come in early to make up for leaving in the afternoon. That brings us back to the start of this story. As I lay in bed that night, exhausted, I knew this wouldn't end well unless I did something. I stared into the dark, and a sudden thought hit me. I wrestled with it for hours and finally decided. With the decision made, I quickly fell asleep. The next morning was easier. The kids dressed themselves. They didn't look perfect, and I'm not sure their socks matched, but they were ready. Knowing they'd eat at school, I dropped them off, did some paperwork with the school secretary, and headed to my office. My first stop was my boss's office. He looked concerned as I walked in with coffee and a smile. "Either you won something or your wife came home. Which is it?" "Neither. I have a request." "Okay, I'm listening. I have almost 3 months of leave saved up." "Yeah? I want to take 10 days starting tomorrow." "What? That's short notice?" I shrugged. He couldn't say no. I had the time saved up and could use it as I wished. Okay, I'll do the paperwork. Can I ask what you're doing? I'm taking the kids on vacation. Are you joining your wife? I'm not sure yet. By the time I picked up the kids from school, I had everything set. From school, we went to Walmart. When we left several hours later, my wallet was lighter, and the Suburban was full. We got pizza and had a picnic in front of the TV, which the kids loved. Their mom would have worried about stains, but I wasn't concerned. We ate and watched Frozen on the Disney Channel. I told the kids they weren't going to school for the next 5 days, maybe more. They screamed with joy. I then told them we were going on a trip. We'd leave before lunch, fly over the ocean, and check into a hotel on the beach. More screams and laughter followed. Once they were in bed, I packed for all of us. It was nearly 1 a.m. when I had all the luggage by the door. I hoped I had thought of everything. If not, there had to be a Walmart in the Virgin Islands. At 9 a.m., an Uber pulled up. With the kids' help, we loaded the bags into the minivan and headed to the airport. On the way, I called the school to say the kids would be out for at least 5 days. Traveling on short notice with kids can be tough, but we were excited. We boarded the plane with no problems, and 6 hours later, we landed in the Virgin Islands. A shuttle took us to the beach resort. We tossed our bags in the room, changed into swimsuits, and hit the beach. The kids were thrilled, and I was too, with a Mai Tai in hand. We stayed at the resort for 2 days. We found not only a beach, but a huge water park with a lazy river, slides, splash pads, and a wave pool. There was also a bar where friendly island staff kept my drinks coming. Life was looking up. While the kids played, I made some calls. I didn't plan to spend all our time by the pool or beach. I finally arranged the next part of our trip. That night, I told the kids we were leaving the resort the next day. They pouted, but I said we were going on a boat trip around the islands. They smiled, though a bit confused. Early the next morning, we repacked and took an Uber to the marina. The kids were amazed by all the boats. I found the man I was looking for. Jeff Turner could have been anywhere between 55 and 75. He had long gray hair and a ponytail, a gray beard, sparkling green eyes, and a bit of a belly. Jeff usually wore swimsuits and bright Hawaiian shirts and went barefoot unless the ground was hot. He was so tan he looked like a local. "You must be Bill. I'm Captain Jeff. And who are these little mates?" I introduced the twins, and they stared wide-eyed at Jeff. "Let's get you on board and your stuff stowed. Then I'll explain the rules on my boat." He led us to a 65-foot sailboat that looked fast even when still. He helped the twins on board, and I handed him the bags. It took a few minutes to settle in. Each twin had a small cabin with a bed, desk, and porthole. I had a slightly larger cabin with a double bed and bath. Captain Jeff kept talking, mostly about how to store our gear and the routine on the boat. The kids listened closely, and I silently thanked them for their good behavior. Once we were settled, we sat in the lounge area. "Here are my rules on this boat. No talking back, no arguing. Everyone works. If I tell you to do something, do it right away. If you don't understand, ask. You're here to have fun, but you also need to learn. Dad, our mornings will be spent doing chores on the deck. Once those are done, we can snorkel, swim, fish, or go ashore. If we like where we are, we may stay overnight. Otherwise, we'll sail to our next spot by dark. Sometimes we'll get there before daylight, sometimes later. Everyone will learn about sailing. Dad, you'll help me with the watches. You two will become junior captains by the time we go home." I liked this guy already. Other charter owners I talked to didn't want to take young kids on their boats. Captain Jeff seemed excited to do it. "Now let's get this boat out of the marina and onto the ocean. Your dad isn't paying me to sit at this dock. We're going sailing." Screams and excitement. I watched as Jeff skillfully maneuvered the boat out of the marina. He only used the motor to get us out of the slip. As we entered the channel, he began giving orders. "Bill, see that blue line at the bottom of the mast? Grab it and unhook it from that cleat. Then lead it to that winch and wrap it 3 times clockwise around the winch. When I tell you, hold the end of the line and crank that winch hard." I moved to the mast and freed the line. I looked back to see Jeff with Ethan in front of him, standing on a cooler and holding the wheel. Annabelle watched, fascinated, as Jeff helped Ethan steer the boat. Jeff called out to me, "Hoist the mainsail." Following his instructions, I held the end of the line and cranked the winch. I saw the mainsail rise on the mast, filling with wind. The boat surged forward as I cranked until the winch stopped. Tie off that line and coil it neatly at the bottom of the mast. I did as he said and then went back to the open cabin. Annabelle was now standing on the cooler, her hands on the wheel, eyes wide with excitement. "Daddy, I'm driving the boat!" We sailed for almost 3 hours. Jeff left me at the helm, which surprised me since I had no idea where we were going. His instructions were simple. Watch the boat. If anything changes, call me. Later, I learned the boat had an automatic piloting system, making it almost unnecessary to steer. Jeff came out with a large tray of cold cuts, cheese, fruit, and bread. The kids were excited, and I found it refreshing. We finally approached a small island and dropped anchor in a calm bay. The water was clear, and I could see the bottom. We even spotted a lobster crawling along the rocks. We'll stay here overnight. We can swim, snorkel, and explore the island tomorrow. This will give everyone a chance to get used to life on board. I'm surprised none of you have gotten seasick. I shrugged. I'm not prone to it, and the kids are resilient. Jeff nodded. We have some housekeeping duties, then we can think about dinner. My menu says spaghetti with meat sauce. Is that okay? The kids love spaghetti, and I'm easy. As long as it's edible, I'm good. Jeff grinned. After some basic chores like cleaning the bathrooms and tidying our cabins, Captain Jeff got the twins involved in cooking dinner. I watched from the bench behind the dining table. He seemed to enjoy it. He had the kids helping with small tasks like cooking the spaghetti and sauce, preparing garlic bread, and getting salad ingredients from the fridge. Ethan, who usually hated green vegetables, turned up his nose at the salad. Jeff then told a story about Popeye the Sailor Man and how spinach made him strong. He promised to show Ethan the Popeye cartoons before bedtime. The kids and I ate heartily. I watched Jeff as he paid more attention to the kids than I did. Ethan, despite wrinkling his nose, ate about half of his salad. After cleaning up the kitchen, I took the kids to bed. They weren't thrilled, but were tired after a long day. When I returned to the lounge, Jeff was sitting at the navigation desk writing in a logbook. He closed the book and smiled at me over his glasses. "Bill, would you like a drink?" "What do you have?" 3 or 4 kinds of beer, a full bar, soft drinks, fruit juices, and a decent wine collection. This is a well-equipped boat. It's a McGregor 65. It's designed to go anywhere in the world. It used to hold the record for the fastest Atlantic crossing in its class. I thought for a minute. "I'll take a beer." "Good choice." He went to the fridge and handed me a cold Coors beer. I opened the beer and we clinked bottles. It tasted amazing, probably because of the boat, the sea, and the company. Over the next 3 hours, Jeff and I got to know each other. He was a retired firefighter from Texas. Just before he retired, his wife filed for divorce, taking half of everything, including his pension. He took his remaining money, moved to the islands, and never looked back. Jeff worked around the marinas for years. Then this boat came up for sale. It had been neglected, and the marina sold it to Jeff for backslip fees. He used most of his savings to buy and fix it up. 8 years later, he owned 4 smaller boats and part of the marina. He spent his time doing custom charters and managing the marina. He listened to my story and sympathized. "Are you going to get a divorce when you get back?" "I'm not sure. Divorce laws are tough. She would get half of everything, the house until the kids are grown, alimony, child support, and I'd only see the kids a few times a month and on some holidays. That's not an option for me." Jeff nodded. I had more questions. "Why are you okay with having kids on board? Most charter captains won't do it?" Jeff sighed and took a drink of his beer. "My ex-wife got custody of our kids. When I moved here, she wouldn't let them visit, even for vacations. I lost touch with them. Now they have kids, and I've never seen my grandkids. Having kids like yours around fills a gap in my heart." I could see the pain on his face. It made me worry about my own situation. Then he asked a surprising question. "Where is your wife on this holiday?" "She's somewhere in the Virgin Islands. She left with her friends a few days before I decided to come here with the kids." "She left without warning?" "She told me 2 days before she left. She didn't ask, just told me." Jeff shook his head and then asked, "Do you know the name of the boat?" "No, she didn't tell me where they were going or any details." "What's the boat owner's name?" "Tom Downey. His wife's name is Ruth." Jeff got up and returned with a tablet. "I knew my cell phone didn't have a signal." Can you get any signal out here? He pointed to a small dome on top of the cabin. Satellite. Full internet service anywhere we go? He tapped on the screen for a few minutes, then grinned. Tom and Ruth Downey. They own Easy Play, a 46-foot catamaran. Nice boat. It has all the latest electronics, including a transponder. A tracking device? Yes. It allows the boat to be tracked by satellite. It's great for charter companies and helps the Coast Guard in emergencies. Right now, Easy Play is about 100 miles south, anchored near a group of small islands. Interesting. Yes, I'm turning in for the night. Me too. It's been a long day. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. I woke up with sunlight streaming through the porthole above my bunk. When I went to bed, the boat was barely moving. Now, it was at an angle, and I could hear water rushing along the hull. We were moving fast. I pulled on shorts and a t-shirt and went to the kitchen and lounge. Jeff was at the navigation station, focused on the tablet. The smell of coffee filled the air. Jeff looked up and grinned. Coffee's on the stove. Mugs are hanging on hooks. I quickly poured a mug of hot black coffee and moved to look at the tablet. It was a weather map of some sort. I thought we were going to spend the day exploring the island. I changed plans after you went to bed. I noticed Easy Play was on the move. They're heading back toward us. I thought I knew where they were going, so I decided we'd head there too. Where's that? Jeff touched the tablet, and the screen changed to a regular map. There were 2 lines, one blue and one red. The red one was us, and the blue one was Easy Play. The lines crossed at another group of islands. Those islands are owned by a cruise ship company. They use them as a port of call. You can buy a day pass to get there by private charter or shuttle. The islands have beaches, sailboats, paragliding, a water park, bars, and restaurants. It's a huge playground. One island is adults only, with amenities I'm sure you can guess. I think your friends are headed there. So why are we going? For a couple $100, you can buy day passes for you and your family. You can do things like paragliding or scuba lessons that I can't offer. That sounds fun, and the kids would love it. And we might see the Easy Play. I'm not sure if I want to see them. Why would I? Jeff grinned with a bit of mischief in his eyes. You spent a lot of money on this last-minute trip. You might as well get some satisfaction if you know what I mean. I thought about it. It would be interesting to sail by that catamaran so they'd know we weren't just sitting at home. How will the kids react to seeing their mom? The family island has a supervised child care area. The kids can have fun there while you explore. I imagined sailing by the Easy Play, standing on the deck of the 65-foot vessel and waving at my wife and her friends. A little payback might feel good. Jeff, you're a sneaky guy, and I like it. How long until we get there? A couple of hours. I'll make mooring arrangements soon. You can get day passes for you and the kids, and I'll find out where the Easy Play is. We'll plan from there. I nodded, and for the first time in a while, smiled widely. The kids won't be up for another hour. Tell me more about this boat and your business. It's interesting. For the next hour and a half, Jeff told me about the McGregor 65, its history, the company that built it, and his experiences as a charter captain. He mostly sailed in the Caribbean but had crossed the Atlantic a few times. One of his dreams was to sail around the world and visit exotic ports. The main thing holding him back was the lack of a crew and a partner. He didn't want to start out alone. He asked about my life, and I gave him the short version up to the present day. He asked about my future plans. Jeff, I don't know. 2 weeks ago, I would have said I'd work until the kids were ready for college, then retire, and Shelley and I would travel. What about your kids? By then, they'd be in college. We'd be empty nesters with time and money to fulfill our dreams. Interesting. But what now, given the current situation? I don't know. A divorce would ruin my plans and my goals. I hoped this trip might help me figure things out. At that moment, 2 smiling faces appeared in the cabin. The twins bounced in, excited for the day. Ethan looked serious. I'm hungry. You're always hungry. He grinned, but Jeff took charge. Breakfast it is. Scrambled eggs, sausage, and toast. Who wants juice? Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. We spent the morning sailing. I was learning new nautical terms. I thought the kids might get bored, but Jeff kept them busy. letting them steer and adjust the sails. The auto-navigation system handled most of it. When dolphins joined us, the kids lay on the deck to watch them. Just before noon, we saw the islands on the horizon. As we approached the harbor, Jeff took control. He knew which buoy we'd moor to. I was on the bow with a mooring stick and line. Jeff confidently approached the buoy. I reached out with the stick and missed the first time, but got it on the second try. Cheers erupted from Jeff and the kids. I tidied up the deck and put the mooring stick away. Jeff's insistence on a neat boat was rubbing off on me. As I headed back, I saw Jeff lowering the inflatable dinghy at the stern. The twins watched closely. Jeff grinned at me. I usually swim to shore, but with the kids, we'll take the dinghy. I need to visit the harbor master, and you need to get your passes. I'll also ask about the easy play. I helped Jeff and the kids into the dinghy and then climbed in myself. The engine roared to life and we sped toward the pier. Jeff went to the marina office and I went to the island office. The kids were thrilled by the volleyball games on the beach and the speedboats towing parasailers. It took me about 45 minutes to make all the arrangements. I had to show our passports, but Jeff had warned me, so I had them in a waterproof pouch on my waist. The main delay at registration was learning about all the options and activities. Some activities, like parasailing and scuba diving, cost extra. I passed on those for now, but signed the kids up for the supervised day program. That would give me some free time. Once we had our passes, we headed back to the marina. I saw Jeff sitting at a table under an umbrella. He had a drink on the table, his tablet in front of him, and some boxes and bags on the bench. When he saw us, he grinned. All set? Yeah, I signed the kids up for the day program tomorrow. They'll be busy from 9 to 5. They also have evening babysitting if I need it. Good. We have a mooring spot as long as we want to stay. I got some supplies from the store and arranged for fresh water to be delivered to our tanks. I learned to never miss a chance to fill up on fuel or water. I nodded. Take the kids and go exploring. This whole island is a big amusement park, and most of it is free for guests. Enjoy yourselves. I'll be on the boat doing some maintenance and then relaxing with a book. When you're ready to come back, check in at the marina office and they'll bring you back in their dinghy. I looked at the kids who were already excited. Let's start our adventure. Jeff, we'll see you later. Do you need anything from the island? No, I'm good. Jeff picked up his gear and I took the kids by the hand and we headed out to explore. It was late when we finally returned in the marina dinghy. Jeff was lying on the cushions in the cockpit reading his tablet and stood up as we approached. Permission to come aboard, Captain? Of course! I had to lift 2 sleeping children to Jeff. Both Ethan and Annabelle had fallen asleep as soon as they sat in the dinghy. With them aboard, I tipped the boat driver and climbed onto the deck. Jeff was holding Annabelle and Ethan was curled up on the cockpit cushion. Can you carry Annabelle to her cabin while I get Ethan? Not a problem. I took Ethan to his cabin, put him on the bed, and tucked him in. He was covered in sand, but I decided to deal with that in the morning. When I came around the corner, I saw Jeff standing over Annabelle as she lay in her bed. He had put her to bed without changing her clothes. I noticed his shoulders rising and falling almost like he was sobbing. I deliberately closed Ethan's door a bit louder than usual. When I turned back, Jeff was coming out of Annabelle's cabin. Bill, you might not think so, but you are still the luckiest guy I know, even with everything going on. He quickly went back to the lounge, leaving me a bit stunned. By the time I checked on Annabelle, closed her door, and made my way to the lounge, Jeff was sitting at the table. 2 glasses with ice and amber liquid were on the table. Jeff motioned toward the glasses. That's some of the finest island rum you can buy. It's too good to mix with anything. I sat down, took a glass, sniffed, and then sipped. I'm not usually a rum drinker, but it tasted unique and wonderful. I looked at him, surprised. That's fantastic. He nodded. I've got some news. The Easy Play is moored at the adults-only island and will be there for the next 3 days. I guess they're staying until they need to return to catch their flight. I listened. It was decision time. What do you suggest? Jeff took a deep breath. That depends on what you want to do next. And there it was. I had to decide. Jeff could see my uncertainty. Look, you still have a few days. Take the kids to the activities tomorrow. We can then spend the day checking out the other island and see what's going on. I'm not sure if I want to visit that island. I agree, but we can sail around it and see what's happening from a distance. Okay. The next morning, I took the kids ashore after their showers and with fresh clothes. Jeff got the boat ready, and when I returned, we set off. It was a short 45-minute sail to the other island. We entered the small bay under power and slowly approached the mooring area. The Easy Play was the only catamaran there. I didn't know what to expect, but what I saw was not on my list. As we entered the harbor, I used a pair of binoculars to look at the Easy Play. I half expected the boat to be empty while Tom, Ruth, and Shelley enjoyed activities on shore, but all three were on board. Tom was lounging on the trampoline between the hulls. Ruth and Shelley were lying on the deck cushions in the large cockpit area. They were all just relaxing and enjoying the sun. I was glad for that, as it meant I didn't have to explain anything to the kids. I lowered the binoculars and took a deep breath, ready to move on and make the most of the day with my kids. I had to show our passports, but Jeff had warned me about that, so I had them ready in a waterproof pouch on my waist. The main delay at registration was learning about all the activities. Some activities, like parasailing and scuba diving, cost extra. I passed on those for now, but signed the kids up for the supervised day program. That would give me some free time. Once we had our passes, we headed back to the marina. I saw Jeff sitting at a table under an umbrella. He had a drink on the table, his tablet in front of him, and some boxes and bags on the bench. When he saw us, he grinned. All set? Yeah. The kids are signed up for the day program tomorrow. They'll be busy from 9 to 5. They also have evening babysitting if I need it. Good. We have a mooring spot as long as we want to stay. I got some supplies from the store and arranged for fresh water to be delivered to our tanks. I learned to never miss a chance to fill up on fuel or water. I nodded. Take the kids and go exploring. This whole island is a big amusement park, and most of it is free for guests. Enjoy yourselves. I'll be on the boat doing some maintenance and then relaxing with a book. When you're ready to come back, check in at the marina office and they'll bring you back in their dinghy. I looked at the kids, who were already excited. Let's start our adventure. Jeff, we'll see you later. Do you need anything from the island? No, I'm good. Jeff picked up his gear, and I took the kids by the hand, and we headed out to explore. It was late when we finally returned in the marina dinghy. Jeff was lying on the cushions in the cockpit reading his tablet and stood up as we approached. Permission to come aboard, Captain? Of course! I had to lift 2 sleeping children to Jeff. Both Ethan and Annabelle had fallen asleep as soon as they sat in the dinghy. With them aboard, I tipped the boat driver and climbed onto the deck. Jeff was holding Annabelle, and Ethan was curled up on the cockpit cushion. Can you carry Annabelle to her cabin while I get Ethan? Not a problem. I took Ethan to his cabin, put him on the bed, and tucked him in. He was covered in sand, but I decided to deal with that in the morning. When I came around the corner, I saw Jeff standing over Annabelle as she lay in her bed. He had put her to bed without changing her clothes. I noticed his shoulders rising and falling, almost like he was sobbing. I deliberately closed Ethan's door a bit louder than usual. When I turned back, Jeff was coming out of Annabelle's cabin. Bill, you might not think so, but you are still the luckiest guy I know, even with everything going on. He quickly went back to the lounge, leaving me a bit stunned. By the time I checked on Annabelle, closed her door, and made my way to the lounge, Jeff was sitting at the table. 2 glasses with ice and amber liquid were on the table. Jeff motioned toward the glasses. That's some of the finest island rum you can buy. It's too good to mix with anything. I sat down, took a glass, sniffed, and then sipped. I'm not usually a rum drinker, but it tasted unique and wonderful. I looked at him, surprised. That's fantastic. He nodded. I've got some news. The Easy Play is moored at the adults-only island and will be there for the next 3 days. I guess they're staying until they need to return to catch their flight. I listened. It was decision time. What do you suggest? Jeff took a deep breath. That depends on what you want to do next. And there it was. I had to decide. Jeff could see my uncertainty. Look, you still have a few days. Take the kids to the activities tomorrow. We can then spend the day checking out the other island and see what's going on. I'm not sure if I want to visit that island. I agree, but we can sail around it and see what's happening from a distance. Okay. The next morning, I took the kids ashore after their showers and with fresh clothes. Jeff got the boat ready, and when I returned, we set off. It was a short 45-minute sail to the other island. We entered the small bay under power and slowly approached the mooring area. The Easy Play was the only catamaran there. I didn't know what to expect, but what I saw was not on my list. As we entered the harbor, I used a pair of binoculars to look at the Easy Play. I half expected the boat to be empty while Tom, Ruth, and Shelley enjoyed activities on shore, but all three were on board. Tom was lounging on the trampoline between the hulls. Ruth and Shelley were lying on the deck cushions in the large cockpit area. They were all just relaxing and enjoying the sun. I was glad for that, as it meant I didn't have to explain anything to the kids. I lowered the binoculars and took a deep breath, ready to move on and make the most of the day with my kids. Jeff slowly motored between the boats, approaching the Easy Play. Tom glanced over and didn't seem interested until I took down the binoculars and stared at him. Recognition hit him and he exclaimed, "Son of a gun." One of the women asked, "What?" I moved closer to the rail as Jeff steered the boat a few meters from the catamaran. Ruth and Shelley looked over and recognized me. Shelley gasped and said, "What in the world?" I raised my hand in a casual salute and then spoke to Jeff. "Captain, I think we've seen enough. Let's leave this harbor." Jeff didn't say a word. He spun the boat around, and as we passed the catamaran, he increased the speed. I looked back at the three of them, watching us with open mouths. Not much was said on the way back. We set the sails, and when I finished on the foredeck, Jeff had refilled our glasses with rum. We sat quietly in the cockpit as the boat headed back to the main island. Jeff finally spoke. "Well, what now?" I shrugged. "I really don't know. Can I offer some advice?" "Sure." "There's one big question. Will you and the kids be better off with her in your life or out of it?" That was unexpected. I had to think about it as I sipped my rum. When I analyze stocks, I use a SWOT assessment. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. Okay, what are the strengths of staying married? It's good for the kids. It avoids financial disaster. That's not many. No. What about weaknesses? Living in a loveless marriage. No trust, no real relationship. It could damage the kids in a toxic environment. True. And opportunities? Not many. Maybe a chance for reconciliation, but that seems unlikely. Keeping the family together, but at a high cost. I'd continue working and building our finances. And threats? I chuckled. The whole situation is a threat. An unhappy, unhealthy relationship could destroy us all over time. I don't know if I could live with her cheating. Okay, what does your analysis tell you? It wasn't in-depth, but it showed me I couldn't go back to Shelley. It would ruin me emotionally and hurt the kids. Divorce would ruin us financially and be hard on the kids. I was stuck. I told Jeff. He poured 2 more glasses of rum. "Bill, you're smart and methodical. But sometimes those qualities can hold you back. Sometimes you need to think outside the box." I looked at him, confused. The rum was affecting me. "Huh?" He laughed. "Thinking outside the box. Sometimes doing what your enemy least expects is the best move." I thought about it. Through the rum and emotion, his words made sense. We approached the mooring, and Jeff took the helm while I went forward to secure the line. I did it in one try, despite the rum. As the boat settled, I held onto the rigging and looked out over the ocean. The music from the beach floated over the water. I heard Jimmy Buffett singing, and his words struck me. "And I have found me a home, yes. I have found me a home. And you can have the rest of everything I own, 'cause I have found me a home." I jumped into the cockpit. Jeff looked up, surprised. I grabbed the rum and filled both glasses. As I sat down, I spoke intently. "Jeff, is this boat enough to sail around the world?" "Hell yeah. Several people have done it on a 65-footer. Why? Let's do it." "What?" "Let's sail around the world and live our dreams." "Are you crazy? You've had too much sun or too much rum or both?" "Maybe, but hear me out." I explained my sudden idea. "I won't go back to live with Shelley. I've seen what she is. I don't want my kids exposed to that. Trying to stay together will be toxic and hurt us all." "Yeah, we talked about that. I won't divorce her and give her half of everything. I won't pay child support and alimony so she can expose my kids to her lifestyle. That won't happen." "But what other option do you have?" "The out-of-the-box one, the plan she can't even imagine. Jeff tilted his head. Yeah? How hard is it to find a boat in the middle of the ocean if the transponder isn't on? Almost impossible. How many ports can a boat slip into to get supplies? Thousands? What if you got an offer to sail around the world for at least 11 years? His eyes widened. That's a long charter. What are you suggesting? Do you have any ties to the Virgin Islands? 3 other boats, a share in the marina, and a small beach house. What are the boats worth? Maybe 60 grand each? Do you need to work at the marina? No, I just do odd jobs between charters. What if you sold the other boats? Let your partners run the marina and rented out your bungalow. That would free you up and give you some cash flow. He thought about it, staring into his rum for a few minutes. A trip like that would be expensive. How would you afford it? If you disappear with the kids, your wife will go nuts. She'll have every agency looking for you and freeze your assets. In a year, she can file for abandonment and get everything. What if there isn't anything to get? I don't follow. My net worth is almost $1 million. If that money was somewhere only I could access, how far could we go? Christ, we could sail for years with that kind of cash. And I can work from almost anywhere with a reliable internet connection. Does the satellite system on board work well? Hell yeah, it does. But would you really take your kids from your wife? She left them without looking back. She hasn't called or texted them. Have they asked about her? Legally, it's risky, but I don't think twice about it. There is the legal risk. You could be a fugitive. So the International Ocean Police are going to track me down? No, but you risk being found and arrested if you go ashore. My intuition says that's unlikely. If we don't stay long in one port, don't draw attention, and avoid air travel, it's a risk I'm willing to take. How long would it take you to set this up? A week or 2. Most of it I could do remotely. How do you feel about taking on a motley crew, a possible felon, and leaving for parts unknown to have a grand adventure? Jeff downed the rest of his rum, slammed the glass on the table, and stood up. Hoist the mainsail, Swabby. It's time to start this pirate adventure. We didn't leave immediately. The resort where we were moored had excellent internet and cell phone access, something I wasn't sure about if we were underway. I convinced Jeff to give me a few days to get started, then we could leave. While the kids played at the water park, I sat under an umbrella and worked on my laptop. My first task was financial. There were several steps. Fortunately, all could be done remotely. I contacted my bank and divided our joint account. Half went to a new account at another bank. Half stayed in the old account, but I removed myself from it. Shelley had a small personal account for her salary from the shelter. I left that alone. Our savings account was divided, with my half going into my new checking account. Shelley had an IRA, which I left alone. We had mutual funds, which I ordered sold, with half the money going to her account and the other half to mine. The only things left were my pension and the house equity. With my good credit and relationship with my banker, I got an equity loan on the house. Once finalized, I would transfer it to my account. I left my brokerage account alone. It was nearing $9 million. I hadn't been at work in a week, but my active accounts were still contributing. I didn't want to touch it until the last minute. I also created several offshore accounts in countries with little connection to the U.S. These are risky, but I had a plan. Over a few hours, I created accounts at 12 different banks in 12 different countries. At each bank, I set up an automatic forwarding system to move any money to the next bank in my chain. My last task was to contact a reputable Swiss bank and set up similar accounts using my LLC for financial analysis. It might seem like overkill, but I didn't want Shelley or anyone else to track the transfers easily. After finishing these tasks, I went to play with the twins at the splash pad. The next day, the kids joined the supervised daycare group for an island adventure. They were going to the nature preserve on the other side of the island. I checked my new accounts and found them all active. I saw that the equity loan was ready, so I transferred the entire amount into my new checking account. With almost $400,000 in the account, I sent the money to the first offshore bank in my chain, leaving just $10 in the original account. While the kids were away, I researched distance learning programs for elementary school children. Various forums for cruising families provided answers and recommendations. I signed up both kids for a highly rated program and ordered the materials to be delivered to our next port of call. We planned to stop in the Virgin Islands for Jeff to close out his business and upgrade the boat. His partner at the marina promised to have all the equipment ready and to make the turnaround as fast as possible. Later that afternoon, as I waited for the shuttle to return with the kids, I checked the balance in my Swiss bank accounts. The transfers had completed successfully. I had one more task to finish the next morning before we left. The next morning, the kids were sad to leave the island but understood we had to go. Surprisingly, we hadn't seen Shelley, Ruth, or Tom. I was ready for a confrontation but never saw them. I got up early and wrote an email to my former boss. I apologized for resigning by email on short notice, asked for any remaining money to be deposited into my new checking account, and provided the routing and account numbers. The funds would then be forwarded through my chain to my Swiss bank. I also requested that the balance in my investment account be handled the same way. With that, I sat back and sipped my coffee. The bridges were burned, and it was time for a new beginning. Less than 2 hours later, the port in the Virgin Islands was slowly fading behind us, and the open ocean was ahead. We didn't have an itinerary or much of a plan. I wanted to disappear, and Jeff wanted to sail around the world. The kids were happy and having fun. They didn't mention their mother much. I kept in touch with a few people back in the States. An email to my parents explained our situation and assured them we were safe. I used untraceable email accounts and a good VPN to make sure no one could find us. Our first journey took us north along the eastern seaboard, visiting historic ports before turning east into the Atlantic for our first crossing. I also contacted an old friend, a lawyer on the West Coast. I paid him a hefty retainer to keep an eye on Shelley. I soon learned she couldn't pay the increased mortgage and had to sell the house, netting almost nothing. She moved in with Ruth and Tom. She sold my car, probably forging my name on the title. There was no activity from Shelley trying to find us, likely due to lack of funds. Her parents complained to the local DA and FBI about kidnapping, but it didn't go far since I was their legal parent. Shelley scraped together enough money to file for abandonment divorce. There was a judgment against me for the transferred money, but no one found it or me. After a year, I asked my lawyer to stop spending money on updates. It took almost 4 years to sail around the world. I learned everything Jeff could teach me and enrolled in an online master's course. I earned my master's license while sailing through the Southern Ocean on our way to Peru. Months later, we moored near the Panama Canal. One of Jeff's last bucket list items was to transit the canal from west to east, bringing us almost back to where we started. By then, I was doing most of the sailing. The twins were almost as good at handling the boat as I was, so they were a big help. Once we made it through the canal, I noticed a change in Jeff. One evening, while anchored in a quiet cove near Colon, Jeff was sipping a beer. I was content to sit and listen to the birds and monkeys in the nearby jungle. "Bill, we need to talk," he said. I looked at him. "Have you been cheating on me, Jeff?" I joked, making him laugh. Then he got serious again. "Seriously, I don't know how much time I have left. When we were in Perth, a doctor told me I have stage 4 pancreatic cancer. I'm near the end." I was stunned and didn't know what to say. "You don't have to say anything," he said. "We all know this is how life ends. I've had a good run. I have some regrets, but I'm mostly satisfied. You, Ethan, and Annabelle have made these last few years wonderful. I love you like the son I never had, and the kids like the grandkids I always wanted. I have a favor to ask." "Anything." "What can we do?" "My daughter lives in Corpus Christi. I've reconnected with her. Her kids are grown and in college. She's divorced. Her husband left her for another woman. I want to spend some time with her. I'll need hospice care soon, and I don't want to burden you and the kids. Take me to Corpus, please?" I was crying. I got down on my knees next to him and hugged him. He patted my back and then pushed me away gently to look at me. "You've been the best friend and companion I could have asked for." I wiped my tears and sniffled. "Jeff, why don't you go to bed?" He nodded. I helped him to his feet and saw him to his berth. I sat down at the nav station and started plotting our course. Jeff came back to the lounge looking confused. I sat at the wheel, not touching it, but watching it and the sails billowing in the Gulf breeze. "What's going on?" he asked. I had set the course on autopilot and hoisted the sails as soon as Jeff was asleep. We were making almost 21 knots and the boat was humming as it cut through the water. "We're going to Corpus Christi," I said. "Jesus, Bill. You're driving this boat harder than I ever thought possible. Is that the big Genoa? Yeah, I had to dig it out from the bottom of the sail locker. It was tough to get up by myself, but the boat runs like a thoroughbred. I think she likes it. Jeff came into the cockpit and sat down. For the first time in days, he looked relaxed. I always wanted to put her to full sail. I'm glad you did it. Where are we? Halfway to Corpus. We'll be there in about 12 hours. We motored into Corpus Christi Bay. A radio call to the marina ensured us a spot with electrical hookups. We found it easily, and were soon docked and connected to shore power. The next morning, Jeff called his daughter. Around lunchtime, we were sitting in the cockpit when she walked down the pier to our slip. Jeff got up and I helped him onto the walkway. They stood face to face for several minutes, not knowing what to do. I finally whispered, "Well, give her a hug, you big pirate." That broke the ice. They fell into each other's arms, sobbing. After a few minutes, I beckoned them onto the boat. Jeff introduced us. "Bill, this is Priscilla, my daughter. I don't even know what last name she's using." "I'm Priscilla Johansson, just like my father. I took back the name after my divorce." "Bill Spencer," I said. She smiled, and just then, two heads popped out of the companionway. The twins, now 11, were curious about the new person on board. I introduced them, and they shook Priscilla's hand, waiting patiently. Annabelle was having a hard time containing herself. "Are you really Jeff's daughter?" Annabelle asked. "I am." "Can I ask you a question?" "Sure." "Why did you break your dad's heart?" I nearly choked. Jeff looked like a deer in the headlights. Priscilla dropped her eyes before looking back up at Annabelle, speaking slowly but firmly. "I know Dad was hurt, but I didn't understand what was happening. I was only 12, not much older than you. My mother took me and my brothers to another house with another man. She told me Dad was mean and she had to leave to find someone who would love her and us. That's all she ever said. Since Dad never contacted us, I believed her. Years later, I learned that her mom left Jeff while he was on duty at the fire station. She wouldn't let him contact us. She told lies to the police, saying he was abusive and dangerous." Priscilla was in tears, focused on Annabelle. She couldn't see the tears streaming down Jeff's face and mine as well. I knew why Priscilla and Jeff were crying, but my own thoughts surprised me. There was a deep, dark hole forming in my chest as I realized some unfortunate truths. I pushed those feelings aside for the moment. Annabelle stepped up and hugged Priscilla. "It's time you got back some of what you missed. When did my daughter become so wise?" I looked at her in awe. Ethan, in his usual way, broke the tension. "I'm hungry. What's for dinner?" We all chuckled. I looked at everyone. "If Jeff feels up to it, I'll pay for dinner out tonight. Priscilla, do you have any suggestions?" "I know just the place if you like fresh seafood." "Seafood is about all we get most of the time." She thought for a moment. "How about some down-home Tex-Mex?" It sounded good to me, and the kids seemed interested. We gathered ourselves and started up the pier. "Oh, I forgot. We don't have a car. Can you fit 5 of us?" "Of course. My Tahoe is big enough." After a delicious dinner of enchiladas, tostadas, tacos, tamales, and chalupas, we finished with sopapillas, butter, and fresh Texas honey. I was stuffed. The kids were still eating, and Jeff looked tired. I think we need to get Jeff back to the boat. He's had a long day. "Why don't you come to my house? I have 5 bedrooms with baths. It's just me there, so you won't be a bother." I looked at Jeff. He seemed hesitant. As I looked at Ethan and Annabelle, Priscilla spoke again. "I have a pool and a hot tub, too. That sealed the deal. There would be no going back to the cramped boat tonight." We piled into the Tahoe and soon pulled into the driveway of Priscilla's elegant home. She parked in the garage, and as the door closed behind the Tahoe, we all exited and entered the house through the kitchen. I looked around in awe. After almost 5 years living on the boat, this felt like visiting a castle. Then I realized we didn't have any clothes or luggage. When I voiced my concern, Priscilla waved it off. "My sons and grandkids visit regularly. They all have clothes and toiletries here. Make yourselves at home. If things don't fit, there's a mall less than a mile away. We can shop tomorrow." That got Annabelle's attention. "Can we go shopping, really? At a real mall?" I realized my kids were about to re-enter normal life. I hoped it wouldn't overwhelm them. We got Jeff settled into a comfortable bed after a shower. The kids were already in the pool. I was sitting at the patio table when Priscilla came out with 2 long-neck beers. "Can I tempt you?" she asked. "Absolutely. This is a beautiful house." "It's too big for me now. It was full of life and excitement when the kids were here. I'm so sorry my dad didn't get to enjoy those times." If I'm not too forward, what happened? What I now know is that my mother was a cruel and selfish woman. She cheated on my father for years. She finally met a man and decided to leave. Dad was a firefighter. She found a banker who seemed wealthy, but he started cheating on her soon after they married. 2 years later, that relationship ended when she was caught cheating with her husband's boss. This led to another marriage and eventually another divorce. By then, I was living on my own, trying to build a life. My mother had turned us against my father, kept us from him, and used her money to fight him. He cashed in his pension, gave my mother half as the court ordered, and left. We never saw him again until a few months ago when he reconnected with me. And you? I married early, at 19. My husband had family money from oil in West Texas and wanted to be a politician, but that never happened. He became a social climber, making donations to causes just to get attention. We had 4 kids. Things seemed fine until he was caught with the wife of a powerful man. He was beaten and spent 3 months in the hospital. He was shunned in Austin society, so we moved to Corpus Christi, where he got involved in shady import-export deals. Next, he was in jail on drug charges. He ended up in a federal prison in Colorado, serving 55 years with no parole. I divorced him, got the house and cars, but nothing else. The feds took everything else as criminal assets. My lawyer argued that the house was bought with money from our Austin home, so it wasn't taken. I went back to school, got a nursing degree, and became a nurse anesthetist. Now, it's your turn. I sipped the beer and told her my story. She was interested in how I met her dad, found my wife and her friends on the boat, and decided to sail away. Priscilla listened as I gave the short version of our trip around the world on her dad's boat. That almost sounds like a fairy tale. It may seem like a fairy tale, but there are enough sad parts to make it a tragedy, too. How so? When Annabelle asked you what happened between you and your dad, I realized I did the same thing to my ex-wife. I never gave her a chance. I took the kids and vanished from her life. Looking back, I know she loved those kids. She was a good mother even if she was a bad wife. Now I'm not sure what I did was right. It was nighttime by now. I looked across the dark pool, reflecting the pale moonlight. Priscilla was quiet. I heard her set her beer bottle on the patio table and speak softly. "It's not too late, you know." "Too late for what?" "To start fixing the damage." "I don't know. I'm pretty sure there's nothing left to start from." "What do you know about her?" "Nothing for the past 3 years. I quit keeping tabs on her. I don't know if she's looking for me or not." "I haven't known you long, but I know my dad values your friendship. He believes in you, so I do too. It sounds like you did what you thought was best for your kids." "I did. I didn't want them exposed to that kind of lifestyle. She was bringing different men into the house, and I didn't want my kids to live like that. I wanted them to have stability and love." "I understand. And your kids have benefited from that. They are well-rounded, cultured, knowledgeable, and polite. You've done a great job. But they are old enough now to make their own judgments. Don't you think it's time to let them decide what they think about their mother?" It felt like a light came on in my darkened soul. I took a deep breath. "Priscilla, first off, your father had as much to do with raising those 2 children as I did. They learned as much from him as from me. If we hadn't been together and spent the last 5 years on that boat, things would have been very different. I also think you have inherited a lot of your dad's wisdom. You've opened my eyes, and now I see what I need to do. It won't be easy, and I'm not sure how it will end, but you may have saved me." She looked at me like I was an alien. Then she seemed to understand. "You have a lot to do. Can I help?" "No. You need to focus on your dad. Make the time you have left with him worth every second. I will take the kids back to the boat tomorrow. Get your dad whatever he needs. I will take care of everything else. You know where to find me." I stood, finished my beer, and went to the bedroom. I slept soundly and woke up happy for the first time in a long while. I found the kids downstairs with Jeff and Priscilla helping cook breakfast. Someone handed me a plate of blueberry pancakes and a full mug of coffee. Life was good. After breakfast, I told the twins we were going back to the boat so Jeff and Priscilla could have some private time. I called an Uber and we were soon on our way. Ethan and Annabelle both knew about Jeff's condition, so there wasn't much conversation. Annabelle broke the silence. "Dad, don't you think it's great that Jeff and Priscilla are getting back together?" "Yes, honey, I do. I'm just sorry it took this long and under these circumstances." Things were quiet as we neared the pier. I was thinking hard. I paid the Uber driver and gave him a generous tip. As we walked down the pier, I made a decision and hoped it was the right one. Back on the boat, we put everything in order as we always did. I grabbed 3 sodas from the fridge and set them on the table. "Guys, we need to talk." Both of them sat down. I could see they were worried. I pushed a soda to each of them. They knew something unusual was about to happen since sodas were usually a treat. "I want to apologize to both of you. I did something wrong. I thought I was doing it for the best reasons, but now I see it was selfish. I'm going to try to fix my mistake." They looked puzzled. Neither one had opened their soda. "Years ago, I got mad at your mom and tried to hurt her as much as I could. In doing that, I hurt you too, even if you don't realize it now. You can thank Priscilla and Jeff for helping me see how wrong I was when we sailed away from the Virgin Islands without looking back." Ethan looked confused. Annabelle, however, seemed to understand. "But Dad, you did what you thought was best for us. Mom left us. We didn't leave her. In a way, you're right, Princess. But it was really about me and your mother. I should never have taken you away from her like I did. She may have forgotten that she loved me, but I'm sure she never stopped loving you. I took that away from her, and it was wrong. Dad, you never punished us." "Yes, I did. I took you away from your mother, who loved you very much. I took from you that relationship, the chance to have her presence and her love in your lives, to participate in your growing up. I robbed you of the very things that Jeff was robbed of by his ex-wife. It was only when I heard the pain in Priscilla's voice as she talked about growing up wondering why her father had quit loving her. It tore me up, and I intend to try to fix it." I could see tears in my children's eyes. I wasn't sure what was causing them, but I kept going. "I'm going to do my best to find your mother, to bring the 3 of you back together and make it possible for you to reconnect and rebuild some of those relationships. There is still time, I hope, for her to have a part in your life. I hope you will see the wisdom in what I am doing and help me along the way." "Oh, Dad, you don't have to do that. We are fine. You have been the best father we could ask for, and the years on the boat going around the world were a dream." "I'm glad you feel that way, but without knowing what you might have missed with your mother, I can't, in good conscience, not do this. I know it will be hard. I can't predict how it will go." Ethan had been listening closely. "Dad, do you think you and Mom will get back together?" "I doubt it, son. There has been too much water under that bridge since I burned it. We have gone our separate ways, and I must admit that what I did to her was pretty savage. She may even have me arrested for some of the things I did, and the way I did them. I am ready to face that. I firmly believe that you two must reconnect with your mother at some level." We continued to talk as they asked how I planned to accomplish the reunion. I was still not quite sure, but my first step would be to contact my old attorney and see if he could track down Shelley. That would happen first thing tomorrow. 3 weeks later, Ethan, Annabelle, and I were in an Uber heading from the airport in our old hometown to a downtown location. My attorney had come through with the information I needed. I learned that Shelley had sold the house and her expensive imported SUV. She had purchased a small condo near the old women's shelter where she had worked. She had returned as a counselor at the shelter, earning a modest salary. But now, almost 6 years later, she was the director and earning significantly more money. The Uber dropped us off on the sidewalk in front of the women's shelter. For security reasons, we had to schedule an appointment to even get into the building. Annabelle took the lead and made the appointment in her name. Annabelle rang the bell at the door, and a disembodied voice asked who was calling. Annabelle gave her name and the appointment code. The door clicked open, and as we entered, a large security guard met us. He immediately stopped us and began his questions. "Who are you two?" "I am Annabelle's father, and this is her brother Ethan. We are here to see the director." "What about—" "These are her children." The guard looked a little suspicious but led us into a small waiting room. I could see the cameras in the corner and knew we were being watched. "You stay here. I will check with her and see if she wants to see you." We all took a seat. It was quiet in the small room and none of us spoke. Suddenly the door crashed open and Shelley came into the room. "It is you. I saw you on the security monitor but couldn't believe it. You are all grown up and so tan. Oh my God." It was obvious she was in shock. The guard stood behind her, watching carefully. Shelley looked at me. "Bill, you look so different. You are thinner and so tanned, too. Where have you been?" "Shelley, is there some place we could talk without the guards and the cameras? Maybe somewhere more comfortable?" Shelley looked around, gathered herself, and began to issue orders. It was clear she was in charge. "Of course. Stan, take my children and ex-husband to the lounge. I will be there in a few minutes. I need to speak to my secretary and clear my schedule for this afternoon." We were soon sitting in a nicely appointed lounge with a small kitchenette, leather couches and chairs, tables and bookshelves with kids' games and books. We were quite comfortable when Shelley came into the room. She seemed to be in her element and immediately began questioning the kids. "Where have you two been all this time? You look marvelous. Have you been in school?" Without waiting for their answers, she turned on me with an intense gaze, clearly upset. "And you? You took my kids, left me with nothing, and tried to ruin my life. And then there was that stunt on the islands. You just stood there with that smug smile on your face, and then you disappeared. I made Tom and Ruth take me back to the airport, and I got the first flight home. I waited for you, but you never came. Not a single word from you for 6 years." I stayed calm and replied evenly, surprising her. "You're right, Shelley. I was wrong, and what I did was wrong. It hurt you and the kids. I'm sorry, that's why we are here today." She looked like she wanted to lash out but stopped, taking in what I said. Okay. So what do you want?" "I don't want anything. Well, I do. I want you to reconnect with our children. I want you to catch up and be part of their lives. I robbed you of some critical years. I hope the three of you can make up for that time." Now, she seemed completely dumbfounded. She looked back and forth between the kids and me. Then she seemed to gather herself and asked with a mix of anger and confusion, "What about you? What's your angle in all this? What are you trying to do?" I shrugged, my palms open. "Nothing. I don't have a plan. Whatever happens now is up to you. You are in charge. You can take this in any direction you want." She leaned back, eyeing me suspiciously. "What if I tell you I want the kids to stay here with me? I can enroll them in school when the next term starts." I felt a pang of pain and saw the kids' eyes go wide at that suggestion. But I stuck to my plan. "If that's what you want, Shelley, I will accept it. But they need to be evaluated before they enroll. They've been homeschooled, so they might need some extra help to get back into a regular classroom. Spend some time with them, get to know them again, and see how they feel about this plan. They are both 16 years old. In 2 years, they will be considered adults and can decide for themselves what they want to do. It's up to you now." I don't think Shelley really believed me. I stayed quiet and let her think. She finally turned to the kids. "What do you two think about this plan of your father's?" Annabelle, always more direct, spoke quietly. "Dad has talked to us about what happened, how he felt, and what he did. We were there. He now realizes that he acted in anger and his decisions were unfair to all of us. He really wants to make things right. If this is what you want and you truly want to be our mother, we will accept that." Shelley listened in disbelief at the way her daughter spoke. She looked at Ethan. "Is your sister speaking for you?" "Yes, ma'am, we understand. You are our mother, and we never really knew what happened between you and Dad. He never said anything bad about you in front of us. He just told us that you wanted more from life than he could give you." Shelley turned her eyes to me. Then she asked, "Why did you take off without an explanation? You never even gave me a chance to explain." I sighed and looked at her. "Do you really want to do this in front of the kids? They have never heard anything about what happened." She hesitated but then decided to go on. "I loved you more than anything. When I saw you on that boat in the Caribbean, I was devastated, ashamed, and embarrassed. When you didn't come back and I couldn't find you and the kids, I went into a deep depression. Why wouldn't you talk to me?" "We did talk, Shelley. For 2 days after you told me about your plan. I argued, begged, and asked you not to go, but you ignored it all. You may have loved me, but you loved yourself more. You may have loved the kids, but you loved the idea of being carefree more. I won't go into the details in front of the kids, but your thoughts about those other people were more important than us. When it came down to it, all that mattered was that you got what you wanted, no matter the cost. I have to give the new Shelley her due. She listened without interrupting. She didn't explode like the old Shelley. I could see she was upset, but she held her tongue until she could speak calmly. When she did, it was to the kids. Do you remember it the way your father tells it? Annabelle looked at her brother and then back at her mother. Even at home, Dad was always the one who was there. You were fun, and I know you loved us. But I remember wondering why you always seemed annoyed with Dad, making fun of him and never standing up for him. Kids notice those things. Shelley dropped her eyes and looked at her hands. When she looked up, her eyes were slightly red and tears were streaming down her cheeks. I really wasn't much of a mother, was I? I am so sorry. I treated your father badly. I was selfish and arrogant. She looked at me. Are you serious about this plan? Yes. I should never have separated you from the kids. I deprived all of you. Now I want to make it up. At least in part. Shelley looked at the kids. Would you really stay with me, at least for a while? It was Ethan who spoke this time, eager. Of course we would, Mom. Shelley looked at me, questions in her eyes. How do we do this? I shrugged. They have most of their things with them. If you're willing, they can go home with you and get settled. I'll check in with you in a couple of weeks to see how you all feel. We can make further plans then. I'm heading back to Corpus Christi tomorrow morning. That fast? You're not going to stay and be part of this? I have no part in it. Shelley, I am well past any reconciliation with you. The only thing connecting us is Ethan and Annabelle. I will stay in touch with them. If you need something from me, you will have my number. She nodded solemnly. Her voice cracked with emotion. Thank you. Back in Corpus Christi, I stayed busy making some repairs and upgrades on the boat. I talked to Jeff and Priscilla almost every day. They seemed to be settling in with their mother. I spent a lot of time keeping Jeff updated on what was happening with the boat. Priscilla was always interested in what was going on with my life, my kids, and my ex-wife. I emailed and texted Annabelle and Ethan regularly. I learned they were adjusting well, but were struggling with the changes of living inland and in a condo. Shelley took my advice and had both children tested before enrolling them in the local high school. I was proud when I learned that both of them tested above high school level. The school enrolled them as seniors and allowed them to take advanced courses. They would graduate in the fall with almost 18 hours each of college credit. I guess maybe I did something right. I was doing all right. I stayed busy with the boat, visiting Jeff, and spending some time with Priscilla. She graciously let me stay in her home while the boat was in dry dock for repairs. This allowed me to stay closer to Jeff, whose condition was rapidly worsening. It had been almost 2 months since I returned to Corpus Christi after taking the twins back to Shelley. I was at the dry dock inspecting the hull after it had been cleaned, repaired, and given a fresh coat of anti-fouling paint. All the through-hull fittings had been replaced, the bearings and seals on the shaft were replaced, and a new Yanmar marine diesel engine was installed and ready to go. Better solar panels and new LifePo 4 batteries would make life aboard even better with more power and longer duration. A state-of-the-art desalinization system meant an almost limitless supply of fresh water. I upgraded all the navigation software and the autopilot to the latest firmware and improved some hardware. All the winches had been removed, rebuilt, and the drive motors replaced with newer, more efficient models. The sails had all been repaired or replaced as needed. The old boat would be better than new when she returned to the water. I was walking around the boat with the yardmaster when my cell phone rang. It was Priscilla, and I was feeling cheerful when I answered. Hey, Pris, what's up today? My mood instantly changed when I heard her voice. It was strained and emotional. Bill, Dad passed just a few minutes ago. Can you come to the hospice center, please? I'm on my way. I told the yardmaster the situation, and he understood. I ran to my rental car and drove quickly to the hospice center where Jeff had been staying the last few weeks. Once there, I found Priscilla standing just outside the door to his room. Inside, the attendants and Jeff's doctor were handling the last details. Without a word, Priscilla came to me, and I wrapped my arms around her, feeling her sobs against my chest. I'm not sure how long we stood like that. Eventually, the doctor came out and asked to talk to Priscilla alone. She nodded and followed him to a consultation room. I took out my phone and made a quick call. Annabelle, is Ethan around? Yeah. What's up? I need to talk to you both. Can you get him? Put your phone on speaker and call me back? He's right here, Dad. Hang on. Annabelle put her phone on speaker and I heard Ethan's voice. Hey, Dad. Hello, son. Can you both hear me? They both answered, and I continued. I hate to bring sad news, but Jeff died just a few minutes ago. I heard both of them sob softly. It was, as I expected, Annabelle who spoke first. I wish I could have seen him one last time. I know. I'll keep you informed about the arrangements. I don't know what Priscilla will want to do. What are you going to do, Dad? I'm not sure about that either. We chatted a bit more, and when I hung up, I realized I was crying as well. I was sitting on a chair, my elbows on my knees and my forehead resting on my hands, looking at the floor. I felt a hand on my shoulder and looked up to see Priscilla. She was actually smiling softly. Come on, Bill, let's go home. Dad is in good hands now. I stood and she took my hand. We walked to the parking lot in silence. I followed her as she drove to the house and parked in the driveway outside the garage. She waited in the garage for me, and we entered the house through the back door. Priscilla immediately went to the cabinet, took down a bottle of the island rum that her dad had introduced me to years ago. She filled 2 glasses with ice and poured the amber liquid over the cubes. Handing me a glass, she lifted hers. Here's to an old pirate, father, friend, and companion. I lifted my glass and drained it. We went out onto the patio pool deck and found our chairs. We had spent many evenings in the past few months getting to know each other, telling stories and chatting, often with laughs and giggles. I watched her and saw a calmness in her that came from strength. What now, Priscilla? I don't know. I haven't had a chance to think about it. Dad wouldn't talk about what he wanted. She chuckled sadly. I asked him, and he always said do whatever I wanted. It wouldn't make any difference to him anyway. He did write out a will and gave it to me. It is sealed in an envelope and in my safe. I guess I can open it and read it now. Isn't there some sort of legal procedure for that? There may be. I'll call my lawyer in the morning. Right now, I just want to let this all sink in. Please stay with me. I would rather not be alone. Of course. I don't have anywhere to go. I guess I really don't have anywhere to go. The boat will be part of your dad's estate. I will make arrangements to get our gear off. Priscilla looked at me with a pained expression. That boat has been your home for 6 years. I hate that you have to leave it. I knew it was coming. The refit is almost done. The boat should be back in the water in a few days, and after some trials to check everything out, it will be ready for you to take possession. I guess I should start looking for an apartment. Don't do anything yet. You can stay here until everything is finished. Then decide what you want to do. Have you told your kids yet? Yeah. I phoned them while you were with the doctor. They were devastated, but they are young, and the good memories will carry them through the grief. You know he loved both of them, just like they were his grandkids. In a sense, they were. He was the only grandfather they had ever known. We sat until late in the cool evening reminiscing, telling stories, and working through the grieving process. By the time we both shuffled off to our respective beds, the bottle of island rum was as empty as my heart. Filled the next few days by putting the boat back in the water. I took a crew from the boatyard, and we sailed out of Corpus Christi Bay. We slowly worked the boat through testing to make sure all the underwater work was sealed and safe. Then, as I sat at the wheel, we progressively added sail until every bit we could manage was hoisted and filled with the salt air. At one point, I glanced at the panel and saw that the old girl was pushing the 25-knot mark. Jeff would have been ecstatic. We started dropping sails and then turned back toward the bay as the sun was slowly sinking in the west. I could almost hear Jeff cackling and laughing. We put the boat back in the berth and the crew left, headed for the local pub. They invited me, but I declined. Not because I didn't think it would be fun. As I had pulled the boat into the slip, I saw a Tahoe parked in the parking lot and a figure walking slowly down the pier. I secured the boat and climbed up to the dock just as Priscilla came alongside. You're out slumming this evening? Not really. I came looking for you. Have you had dinner? No, we just got back. The boat is complete. She is a cheetah on the water. You should let me take you out one day before the estate is settled." "I would like that. But I want to talk to you. Let's go get some dinner." We wound up in a small fish place not far from the pier. I had found it, fallen in love with it, and ate there often. They almost always had fresh oysters and lots of cold beer. We settled in a booth and ordered. Priscilla didn't wait. "My brothers will be here tomorrow with their families. The probate hearing will start at 9 a.m. I would like you to meet my brothers and their families before the hearing. You should be at the hearing, too." "Isn't that usually just for the families?" "You were closer to family with Jeff than any of us, really. I think it is appropriate that you attend." That seemed to settle the argument for Priscilla. I was surprised, but in honor of her wishes and the memory of Jeff, I would certainly be there. We finished our meal, and to my surprise, most of the conversation was about that boat and our trip around the world. The next day, I found a pair of decent pants and a button-down shirt. It occurred to me as I was getting ready that most of my wardrobe now consisted of khaki cargo shorts and some of the most garish Hawaiian shirts you can imagine. I guess Jeff's sense of style had worn off on me over the past few years. I rode to the courthouse with Priscilla. I met her 3 brothers in the waiting area, was introduced to their wives and kids, and then sort of faded into the background as they all huddled like families tend to do. When the clerk ushered them into the hearing room, Priscilla made a point to come and take my arm and walk in with me. Chairs were arranged around a massive conference table. The county judge sat at one end, and the clerk arranged paperwork in front of him. He took charge, called the hearing to order, and asked us all to sign a register. When that was done, he opened the envelope and looked at the papers inside. His eyes came up and focused on Priscilla. "Your father wrote this will himself?" "Yes, sir." "How was his condition when he wrote it?" "He was in stage 4 pancreatic cancer, but his mind was sharp and he had all of his faculties. I think there is a statement to that fact from the doctor who was attending him." "Yes, I see that. I see that there are 2 witness signatures, but no notary seal." "Those were the nurses on duty at the time he wrote that. There wasn't a notary in the facility." The judge nodded and continued to read the will. "This is very straightforward, but may have some surprises. It might be easier if I summarize the provision in the will rather than try to read it, if that meets everyone's approval." Everyone nodded, and the judge took a pad and made some notes as he reread the will. He then looked up at us over his glasses, which perched on the very tip of his nose. "According to this will, your dad's major assets consist of a bungalow in the Virgin Islands currently being managed by a local vacation rental company, a 1/4 interest in the marina at the same location, 7 investment accounts, 1 for each of his grandchildren, his personal checking account, and a boat. These assets are to be divided in this manner. The 7 investment accounts are in trusts for the grandchildren. There are some specific instructions with the trusts that you can decipher at your leisure. The balance of the assets are to be passed to one Bill Prescott." The judge looked at me. "I assume that is you?" I was dumbfounded. Everyone in the room was looking at me. I swallowed and spoke with a dry mouth. "Yes, that's me." "You are named as the executor of the will, which means you are responsible for the trusts named in the document. The title to the property will be transferred to you forthwith, as will the title to the boat. You will have to deal with the authorities in the Virgin Islands about the partnership in the marina and the bungalow." The judge finished reading the will and said, "I'll have the clerk process the documents. You'll receive them by courier in 3 or 4 days. This hearing is now concluded. My condolences on your loss." He stood up and left. The clerk gathered the papers. I sat in stunned silence. I heard chairs moving and felt anxious, expecting angry reactions from Jeff's family. I felt a hand take mine, breaking my thoughts. I looked around to find the family member standing close by. Unsure of what to do, I tried to make amends. "I'm sorry. I had no idea Jeff planned this. I'm sure we can work something out." Priscilla chuckled and squeezed my hand. "Bill, I was there when Dad wrote that will. I knew what was in it. He and I talked about it for hours. I spoke with my brothers, and they knew too. It wasn't a shock to us. We didn't expect anything anyway. We have a few requests for you." "Of course, whatever I can do." "First, we had Dad cremated. I want to take him back to the islands and spread his ashes there, where he was happiest." "I think that's a great idea." "Second, I want you to captain the boat and take me and Dad back to the Virgin Islands." I gulped, tears starting again. It would be my honor. "Third, if you don't mind, we hope you keep the bungalow so we can all visit, go sailing, and have you as part of our family." I couldn't speak, so I nodded enthusiastically. "Finally, we're all headed to my house for pizza and whatever else we can think of. Please join us. You need to get to know my brothers and their families." I didn't have a choice. I climbed into Priscilla's Tahoe and we were off. Soon after arriving at the house, a stack of the biggest, thickest pizzas I had ever seen arrived. There were also calzones, cheese sticks, huge green salads, and one of the brothers brought a cooler full of wine spritzers, beer, and pre-made cocktails. The pool was filled with laughing kids, and everyone gathered around the patio table. I sat down, watching and listening. The brothers asked Priscilla a lot about her time with their dad. She tried to answer their questions, but often glanced my way. Finally, I filled in the gaps, which soon had everyone's attention on me. Over the next couple of hours, I did a lot of talking, but also observed the siblings closely. It told me a lot. Priscilla and her brothers, James and John, looked just like Jeff. James was even a firefighter like his dad in a Dallas suburb. The youngest brother, Frank, resembled their mother more. He didn't look like Jeff, and didn't have the same outgoing, friendly attitude. He was quiet and withdrawn, almost sullen. I didn't think he wanted to be there. They eventually asked how I got so close to Jeff. I told them everything, from my wife's sailing adventure to our trip around the world and Jeff's health news. They seemed captivated. Then Pam, James's wife, asked about the twins. I explained how hearing Priscilla's story had opened my eyes to what I had done. When I finished, Pam looked amazed. "I can't believe you took your kids back and let them stay with your ex-wife. That must have been so hard." "It was tough. I miss them every day, but I guess that's part of paying for my mistakes." "Do you think they'll come back?" "I don't know. They're living in a new world now and are nearly adults." Pam glanced at Priscilla. "No chance you'll stay in Corpus Christi?" "I don't think so. After those years on the boat, I feel uncomfortable in the city. It's too crowded, noisy, and fast-paced for me now." "Back to the ocean?" I grinned. "Most likely." The next day, everyone else was gone. I made coffee and walked around the pool, picking up floats, pool toys, and towels. Priscilla came out in a knee-length emerald green gown. I tried not to stare, but my self-control was lacking. She grinned at me. "Don't be embarrassed. A woman appreciates being looked at. I guess I should have put on something else." "No, it's your house. You should feel comfortable. There's coffee made." "Great, thanks." She returned with a mug of coffee. I had finished tidying up and joined her at the table. Priscilla held her mug in both hands, speaking quietly. "Thank you. You've made this a lot easier." "I'm glad I could help. Dad's ashes will be ready tomorrow." "When do you want to go to the island?" "Whenever you're ready to leave." I thought about it. The boat was almost ready. I looked at her. "I need a couple of days to finish provisioning the boat." "Good. How long will it take to get there?" 2 or 3 days, depending on the weather." She looked surprised. "Are you going to motor the whole way?" I laughed. She clearly didn't know the boat. "Oh no, we'll be under sail." She raised her eyebrows as she sipped her coffee. "You do what you need to do. I'll make arrangements to be away for a month and set a date to scatter Dad's ashes. My brothers want to join us, so it'll probably be all of us there." "Is that a problem?" "It's your family. Do it your way. I'll support you however I can." She grinned. "Today is Tuesday. Let's plan on leaving Friday morning. I think I can have everything ready by then." "What should I pack?" "Not much storage space. Minimalism is key. My usual sailing wardrobe is shorts or a swimsuit and a shirt. I keep a couple of casual outfits for going ashore. Remember, this is island life. It's laid back and casual." "I think I can handle that." The next 3 days were busy. I had the marina fill the tanks and recheck everything on the boat. I made several trips to Costco for provisions, probably going overboard, but I wanted this trip to be special. I plotted the route, checked the weather forecast, and replotted to take advantage of the winds. Thursday evening, Priscilla and I took her things to the boat. I showed her the master cabin, and she was in awe. I helped her stow her things, including Jeff's ashes, in a cabinet in the salon overlooking the navigation station. He would be with us on this voyage. The next morning, I was doing final checks when an Uber pulled up and Priscilla stepped out. She wore dark shorts and a flower print blouse, grinning broadly as she approached the boat. "You just keep making me feel special looking at me like that." "You are special. I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry. Help me onto the boat." I held her hand as she stepped down. The sun was shining, a fair wind was blowing offshore, and I was as happy as I could remember. I may have held her hand a little longer than necessary. She dropped her eyes, and I thought I saw a blush as I let go. There's nothing keeping us here. Let's start this adventure. Hey listeners, if you enjoyed watching this video and want to stay updated with our latest content, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss out on what's coming next. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video with Queen Cheating Tales.